Welcome to the Synchronicity Show. It is your host, Kevin Wathey, and my guest today is a very interesting one, and that's because food activists come from all walks of life, but there is generally one common theme among them all, and that's the frustration with the current food system. Courtney Swan is an integrative nutritionist and a real foodist on a mission to change the way America eats. She received her Master's of Science in Nutrition and Integrative Health from Maryland University of Integrative Health. On a mission to help people, Courtney built a following on social media where she posts daily about the real food and organic movement on her Instagram account, Realfoodology. She aims to educate on the dirty practices of the food industry and how to eat healthy with real food. She doesn't believe in diets and promotes a real food approach to eating. She currently resides in Los Angeles and works on her Instagram and podcast, the Realfoodology podcast, full-time. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am stoked to get educated today on all things food and the lack of diet and everything and everything around fueling the Ferrari, as we spoke just briefly a second ago. But to start off, you're not in LA, you're in Boulder.
Yep. Yeah. So I actually, this is kind of a funny story. So I was in LA throughout the entire pandemic. As I'm sure most people listening know, that LA was particularly strict during the pandemic. And I hit a point in May where I was just like, I have to get out of here for a second. I've been here for a year. I've been like pretty locked down, and I decided I was going to go on this solo trip. So I left May 30th and I went on this little like solo road trip with my dog. We did some glamping. We stayed at those like under canvas tents in the Grand Canyon and Lake Powell. It was amazing. I stayed in Joshua Tree. I actually came through Arizona and I stayed at this like really nice wellness spa for 2 days. Savannah, I think is what it's called.
Side note there, I'm actually an ambassador for Savannah, so shout out Savannah.
Yes, that's amazing. I had such a wonderful experience there. I like truly needed that. After this last year, it was like, and so, so I went on this little road trip, just me and my dog, and my family's in Telluride, Colorado, this little mountain town in Colorado. And so my plan was then I was going to land in Telluride. I was going to stay there for a week alone. And then two of my best girlfriends met me out there. And my whole plan when I left LA was I was just going to take this solo trip. I was going to have a couple weeks alone and just kind of like reconnect again with myself. And I get to Telluride. My girlfriends come in, we hang out for a week, and we are literally, I think it's like a Monday, and we're supposed to drive back to LA on Thursday. And I looked at them and I was like, I just can't go back to LA right now. Like, I don't know what it is. Every bone in my body is like, no, I can't do this right now. I'm not ready to go back yet. So stayed in Colorado another week. And then I ended up getting an Airbnb in Austin. I stayed in Austin for a month and it was amazing, but it was not really my place. So then this is how I ended up in Boulder. I actually went to CU Boulder for 4 years. I graduated went to college there, did my undergrad here. And I just felt really called to come back. So I got an Airbnb and I've been here for about a month, and I'm kind of feeling now like I'm ready to go back to LA. I really miss my friends. So
as a side note for both of this, and it was interesting because growing up, I always fantasized and kind of almost romanticized Los Angeles and LA. And every single time that I've traveled to LA, it's gone progressively downhill. Like from what I had initially pictured as almost where I wanted to live at some point. And my sister actually lives in Studio City. So I'm out there frequently, but every single time I go, it's like one more thing, like one more checkbox, like why I don't want to be here, why I don't want to go this. And it's interesting to see as you grow up and how you actually start to now kind of make your own choices and decisions and notice how those things then influence the rest of your life, which I know we're going to get into in food in a minute here, but how that's what I wanted for so long, but I never actually took the implications of what that meant and how that would then translate into my body. And Boulder, I got all these stories that are coming up right now. Boulder, I absolutely love Boulder. And the last time I was in Boulder, my friend Neil and I decided it was a great idea to go rent mountain bikes and go all the way up to the top and then mountain bike back down. So we rented the bikes on, I think that's Main Street or whatever that street is, and we're like going up the mountain. and we're just going up and up and up and up. And I'm looking at like my phone, seeing where all trails takes us. And then we just keep going. I look at my phone. We passed the entrance like 3 miles ago. And I was like, the hell is going on? So then we ride back down and we get back down there and then we're at it. And then there's like nothing around. So then we go back up and then back down. And we probably did 15, maybe 20 miles up and down this hill, not even getting onto the track and the trail that we wanted to go down. So then I'm finally like, all right, let's just go to exactly where it says. And we get to it. It's on the side of the highway, like where the guardrail is. And it literally, there's no signage. You just look over the guardrail and there's like 5 steps that are down to the first part of the track. So then we pick up our bikes, hike down this little stairwell. We get down and we start going down. We're about 5 miles into the middle of the forest out there. There's nothing around. Now we're in the middle. It's like 10 miles total. We're in the smack dab middle, and it starts hailing golf balls, golf ball sized hail, and there's nowhere to go. There's literally nowhere to go. And I'm like, all right, this is the experience today. So then we ride down the additional 4 miles. We finally get back. I thought it was this huge big deal. Everyone there who's like in the mountain bike world, probably they're like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. Because we returned the rental bikes, no one said anything, but like we're walking in, we're like, all the way in, and everyone's like, all right, you guys have fun? I was like, yeah. All right, now we got to Uber back to, we were staying in Denver at the time, we got to Uber back to Denver, and we're like soaking wet. I bought a towel to wrap myself in the Uber so that I wouldn't get his car wet, but I don't know why that came up. I haven't thought about that story in ages, but it's I feel like there's a lesson to be learned there, that it's the experience that you expect isn't the one that you necessarily need. And maybe that is how it happened for you with LA. You expected something and then it changed because of the pandemic, or it changed because of external influences. But good on you for then kind of taking life by the horns and being, okay, it's not right for me right now. I need to transition. I need to go somewhere that actually fuels me up and fulfills me and kind of lights my soul on fire, which I feel like is a common theme throughout your life too. You don't get to being a food activist and a podcast host by not following what you're passionate about. And I guess that leads me into a question too. We can go back and forth, but it leads me into a question. Where did that desire to always be looking for something that fulfills you come from?
Wow. Okay. I'm not entirely sure where it comes from. It's always been inside of me. It's so funny because when I was younger, so my dad is very, very business oriented. He started his own business. He works in contracting. And so he does a lot of construction and all this. And as a kid, he was always bringing me to construction sites and introducing me to people and being like, you could do this one day. And I was like, I'm never working in construction. Sorry, Dad. But, even like having started his own business, he was so business oriented and he always really tried to push that on me. And so I have this like business oriented side of me, but I just I don't really know why or where it comes from, but I've just always had this like very strong intuition that I'm able to tap into, and I've always really been able to follow it. And it's so funny because, it's like that. I'm sure everyone has seen this graph online where, it's like what everyone thinks success looks like is this. But what it actually is, it's like a roller coaster where you're just like, and you're going left and right and up and down and like all over the place. That could not describe me more, because I started out working in music. So I got my undergrad in communication. I was going to study music in school, but then I was like, I don't know if that's going to serve me super well. So I'll go in communication and go from there. And I ended up working in music for 10 years. And that was a culmination of me really following my heart and my desires at the time, because I was very passionate about music. But then I started getting really into health and wellness. And I just I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it other than I get so excited about things and I can't not follow them. And then I started getting really, really into health and wellness and nutrition and just how food really impacts and fuels our bodies. And I got so passionate about it. I quit the music industry. I went back to school, and I have a point in all this that comes back around to my dad. So basically, this whole time that I was working in music, my dad would constantly just be like, you need to get a real job. Like, you need to just go do a 9-to-5, stop doing this music stuff. What are you doing? Because he would always try to get me to like make this plan. And I'd always tell him, I was like, Dad, I'm telling you, like, I'm following what feels right for me. And I've noticed that every single time I follow what is right for me, things just line up. And I'm not saying that I sit back passively and I wait for things to happen to me. Like, I really hustle and I go after the things that truly light me up. And because I do that, it's like the universe kind of like, shows me the path. And I will tell you, this last summer, my dad actually took me on a walk, and he was so hard on me for so long. And he goes, Courtney, I just want to say that I'm so proud of you for just following your heart and your intuition, because look at you now. He was like, I know I was so hard on you and I doubted you and I tried to steer you in another direction, but you stood strong in your ground and you really followed what was true for you. And he's like, I'm so proud of you because you did it. Like, and look, I don't think by any means that I have like finished what I'm here to do on this earth, but I do feel like every goal that I put in place for my life, I've been able to check off. So I'm very proud of myself for that.
Why do you think it is that parents more often than not try and steer their kids in a specific path? I know it's kind of almost based in love, and it's because they want to see them become successful, but it's almost they want to see them become successful in what they want them to be successful in rather than what they actually want to do, which is the complete opposite side of the coin. It's like, how can you make a decision for someone when you don't actually know how they think? Sure, you raised them, sure, you birthed them, but you're not inside their head, and that's what then makes you unique. And I'd be curious, now that you have that kind of, you see both sides now, you had the before and now almost the after, what was it that allowed you to go against the grain and be like, look, I know that's what you want me to do, but I'm not going to do it? Because that's really, really hard for a lot of people.
Oh, it was really hard. I'm not sitting here at all saying that this was easy, because imagine, your parents, like I would think and hope that most people listening have a lot of respect for their parents, and you want to listen to what they say. And, my dad's really smart. He's a great businessman. So there was a constant internal struggle of me being like, oh, am I doing this wrong? I don't know. But all I can say is that I have such an intense passion for what I'm doing that it always outweighed everything else. Like, I don't know how else to say other than I believe in it so strongly that it's what really pulled me through. So even in those times where I was questioning things, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to keep trusting that this is the path that I need to be on. And it doesn't mean that I didn't have days where, I was like, I don't know about like, where are we headed here? What's happening? What are we doing? I still have those days now. But it's just, I've over the years, I will say though, I've really learned to trust myself and listen to that voice. And it really is just this, I have such an intense passion and desire and compassion, for helping people. And for me, I feel like that translates into helping people with their diet, because I see the suffering that's happening, especially in the United States. And, I just want to help.
I think you touch on a really interesting point and a really good point right there, because it's the passion and the fulfillment that will ultimately fuel you towards success or away from it. But if you're not focusing on something that lights you up inside, you're never going to achieve the success that you want, because you're never going to persist long enough in order to then achieve that any modicum of success possible. Because you're right, there are those ups and downs. There are days where it sucks, but there are days like there's high highs, low lows, and everything in between. But the thing that most people recognize, and I think entrepreneurship and being a business owner, things like that are kind of glamorized. And it's almost this life is all unicorn and rainbows kind of thing. when in reality, it's none of that at all. And you have to be so strong and passionate and fulfilled in what it is that you're doing, and really dive in and know your why, that's what when I work with clients and I coach, it's starting with why always. It's like the Simon Sinek, start with why. And it's because without that, there's no amount of anything else you can do in the world that's going to allow you to achieve what you want. Because if you're not fueling yourself, which we talked, again, your body is your Ferrari, at least we hope you think it is.
Yeah.
We've all been there. And I, not to speak for you, but I know that because of the passion that you have, that when you have that passion, you can work and you like forget to eat like nonstop.
Yes.
You're in almost a flow state, and you're like, oh shit, it's 10 o'clock at night. What did I do today? And you forget about it, but it's because you're so passionate about what you're doing that is a fuel in and of itself. And without that, you're never going to progress or to get to the point that allows you to have that moment from your dad that says, hey, look where you've come. I'm proud of you. If you didn't have that thing that lit you up inside and that intuition that you're following, I don't know if you would have gotten to that point. I know I wouldn't have gotten to where I was if it wasn't an internal driving force. If I just said, here's where I want to go. Well, first off, I wouldn't even know where I want to go because I'm not being guided by anything.
Yes, yes. And that excitement, that passion, that intuition, like I was saying earlier, is really what guides you. And it's so interesting. You brought that up about entrepreneurship. Like I read this one time and nothing had resonated more in my career. They said that, like you said, it's glamorized and everyone's like, oh, I want to do this and like own my own company. This is so cool. But if you are not passionate about something, you're not going to be able to put in all those hours because it's so glamorized. But what we don't see is often entrepreneurs are working 18-hour days, sometimes, 12-hour days, whatever it is. Like they're working well into the night. And it's truly because they're passionate about it. This is not something, it's not some job that, you clock in and then you clock out of, and then, you don't think about it the rest of the day. Like for me, I mean, this is like, I live and breathe this, like it is like my whole life. I don't ever clock out, I
was speaking to someone the other day and I was like, so why they wanted to start a business. And I said, well, why do you want to start a business? And they said, I want to get into entrepreneurship so I don't have to work weekends anymore. And I was like, we have to have a pretty tough conversation right now because sure, you can work and get yourself to a point where that's not the case. But what you're negating and what you're failing to recognize is the 5, 10, 15, 20 years that you have to spend in order to get to that point. And if that's your goal initially, we gotta let's reframe where you're heading, because you're gonna just set yourself up for failure and defeat from day one, which is not what you want to tell anyone. But I feel like a lot of people, it's this, like you said, the glamorized aspect to it that most people head towards. They're like, this is what the movies tell me it is. Oh, it'd be great to own my own business. I don't work weekends. I'm sitting on a beach sipping margaritas. It's 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. What are you doing?
When in reality, actually, this is a real story. You end up working like 7 days a week. In fact, I hit a point last year of total, complete exhaustion and burnout, to the point that my therapist literally was like, I'm giving you a prescription and I'm telling you, you are not allowed to work on Saturdays and Sundays. He's like, prioritize fun, go out in nature, make plans with your friends, stop working on Saturdays and Sundays because you need a break and you're burnt out. So yeah, the reality is you end up working way more than you would work a normal job.
Talk to me about that work ethic and recognizing that you both need to prioritize. On one hand, you need to prioritize the business and getting things done because you're the one steering the ship. But on the other hand, if you don't take a break and if you don't schedule in that time for yourself, you're not going to have the energy to continue pushing forward. So how in your life, what habits, routines, rituals do you have that allow you to kind of almost find the balance between the two, or the ebb and flow from one to the other?
So there's two things that help me the most. One, I have since I had that conversation with my therapist, I have really, I'm holding very strong boundaries now about working on Saturdays and Sundays. Of course, there will always be things that come up. And if there's something really, really important that comes up, I will dedicate some time to a Saturday and a Sunday. But generally speaking, I hold myself to these boundaries now where I do not work on Saturday and Sunday. And I make sure to plan really fun things. One of my girlfriends and I in LA started doing this thing where every weekend we made a plan to get out of LA. We love hiking and we love kind of doing like adventure type stuff. So we would plan these little trips. Like we hiked into these hot springs one day, like 2 hours outside of LA. We would drive to Laguna and do these like really amazing, beautiful, like ocean view hikes. And so that's one thing for me that I really prioritize. And then another thing is actually just getting outside in the morning before I start my day. It really is like outside of, I actually go to talk therapy, but like getting outside, going for a hike, getting in the sun so that my body can synthesize vitamin D, which is, you know, your body's happy hormone. It's also really good for the immune system. There's also a lot of studies that show that just literally exposing yourself to nature helps to calm down the nervous system, and your eyes seeing the balance in nature really, it just, whether you realize it or not, is subconsciously giving your brain this like kind of calmness and like sense of balance in the world. And it's also a bonding time for me and my dog, and it's exercise. So, you know, me and my dog, we go on these little hikes every day, and I've been loving it in Boulder, by the way. So that's really how I stay on top of everything, is I just prioritize that first. I have a green juice every day too. That's also something that's really important to me. I make sure I get in my exercise, my hikes, and then I'm able to start my day.
Other than those, are there any specific rituals or morning routines or habits that you have that set your day up for success?
You know, this is a funny one. I'm probably one of the only like health and wellness experts or whatever, as you will say, that doesn't really have a routine. I will say, so I guess my routine is getting up in the morning, making my coffee, and then going out the door for my hikes. I'm really working on this because it's something that I want to do more, but because of I worked in music for 10 years. And what that means is, so I was working as a tour manager, and I was traveling all around the world with different bands. And the last person I worked for was a pop star who was Swedish. So we spent a lot of time in Europe. And my point in all of this is saying that my internal clock, my body is still a little bit confused as to like where I am all the time. I'm getting to a place now, like I've been in the same time zone for a while, but for 10 years of my life, I was waking up in a different city every single day. We were flying every other day. I was living on a tour bus. So like every single day was a different day. Like I was literally waking up in a different city. I would wake up at different times, and all of that is not conducive with health, by the way. If you hear experts talk about this, it's everything. It's the complete opposite. They say, wake up at the same time every single day. Try to go to bed the same time every night. I physically literally couldn't, because sometimes she would go on stage at 6 p.m. Sometimes she would go on stage at midnight. And, you know, like I really just had to my body got to a point where I would really just get sleep whenever I could, you know? And so I'm really trying to unravel all of that right now and trying to get myself back into a place of like more steadiness and routine. But it's been really hard for me because I've lived in this one state for so long that I almost feel like having that kind of spontaneity every day for me is my routine.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really interested though, because you've seen both sides of the coin here. You've seen the kind of the routine of waking up in one place, same time, same place every single day. And you've also seen the drastic opposite end of the spectrum. But taking the opposite end of the spectrum for a moment, there are a lot of people who live those crazy lifestyles where you're in a different place. You're on a tour bus. I played hockey for a long time, and we were always on a bus, always going somewhere. Always, granted, it was on the East Coast, so I was always in Eastern Standard. But I understand the travel back and forth and how that affects the body. But the people who are traveling the most are often the ones who have to perform at the top and perform the best. Yeah. So what did you see, maybe with this example or with others, were they doing in order to ensure that they were able to perform at the top, at the peak, every single time, every single day?
You know what's interesting? The last person that I worked for, she's a Swedish pop star, and I was with her for 4 years, and I was brought on tour with her to help prioritize her health. So I was really there to help facilitate diet. So I was always on top of making sure that she had healthy food, healthy options for every meal. And yeah, the biggest thing was, because we couldn't consistently go to bed at the same time every night, and some days we were waking up really early, the biggest thing, and there's a lot of controversy around this, but if this is the only thing you can do, it's the only thing you can do, was that when we would have days off, like we would just sleep for like 12 hours to try to like, overcompensate for the sleep that we lost. So there's that aspect of it. There's also like, no matter what, we would always get some sort of movement in. So she and I would go to the gym almost every single day, or we would go to SoulCycle classes in different cities. But I will tell you, the biggest thing that helped more than anything was diet. So she's Swedish. And when she and her band first came over here, the Swedes in general, and we can talk about this a little bit because this goes hand in hand with our food industry and what's happening in the US compared to other countries in Europe. And I saw this firsthand. The Swedish government takes care of their people in a way that they don't allow a lot of additives and hormones and pesticides and all this crap in their food. So they, generally speaking, eat a lot healthier than Americans. They eat a lot of sugar, but that's like a whole other thing. And so when the Swedes came to America and they started touring around here, they said that after their first tour, they all couldn't button up their pants when they left. They all felt super lethargic. They were having a hard time on stage because they didn't have a lot of energy. And they all went home and they were like, we're eating the same stuff that we would eat in Sweden. Like, what happened? And it's literally because we have a lower quality food here in the United States compared to Sweden. So when I was brought on, so maybe like a year into them touring in America, is when one of my best guy friends happens to tour manage her. And he reached out to me and he was like, hey, we need help. Like, can you come on tour with us? Like, make us smoothies every day. Just be in charge of food for everyone, for the band. And I'll tell you, after our very first tour that we did, and I really didn't do much except for, well, I don't want to say that. I don't want to take credit away from myself. But what I did was so simple, was that I completely revised their rider, which is, for anyone listening who doesn't know that, it's a list of things that you send to the venue before you show up. And it's like snacks for in the green room, stuff that you put on the bus. It's just like a list of food that you want. Famously, you'll hear like Beyonce asks for like only green M&Ms and like stuff like that. It's that kind of thing. Which, by the way, this is like a cool little just side note. Usually artists do that, not because they're being high maintenance, but they want to see if they're paying attention to the list, because often they won't pay attention fully to what you say. So I completely revised that because I was looking at their rider before and it was just like, Doritos and Gatorade and just like all this crap that's not going to fuel your body. And so what I did was I replaced it with really healthy food. I didn't take away the chips entirely, but I was like, hey, let's get this like Dorito crap out of here and let's get like late July organic chips that still taste good, but they don't have all the additives and crap in it. And then I was in charge of getting our meals for the day. So then I would, every day before we got to the city, I would Google like organic healthy restaurants around the venues, and then I would have it delivered. And I will tell you, after that first month of that tour, her parents flew out from Sweden and they met us at this show in New York. It was the last night. And they came up to me and they were like, what did you do? They were like, what happened here? Everyone looks great. Everyone has so much energy. Everyone lost weight. And she was joking. She was laughing with me because her parents had pulled her aside and they were like, did you guys stop like partying and drinking? Because everyone on tour is like notorious for drinking a lot and, having late nights and partying and whatever. And she was like, no, Courtney just came in and completely revised our diets. And they all, like I said, they lost weight, they had energy, and they felt like they could perform again on stage. And that is such a testament to what you put in your body really does. It fuels it. It's like we keep saying, you want to treat your body like it's a Ferrari. If you drive a Ferrari, you're going to put premium gas in it. You're not going to put the low grade gas because it's going to destroy your engine.
Very, very true. And very great point. And it's I don't know if it's overlooked or if it's neglected or what it is that I think, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I think what I'm trying to say is that we, especially in the United States, because you don't necessarily see this elsewhere, but we prioritize convenience over quality. And when you prioritize convenience over quality, you then get something that's of a less quality, of a lower grade. But then what you don't realize is that's then affecting the output of what you are now, your Ferrari. So then that then has this kind of like cyclical, like we're on the hamster wheel effect now, where now if it's affecting your output, you're not able to perform at the same level. And then because you're not performing at that level, you're now working from a lowered state. So you're not from the same place, which now you're going to crave less healthy alternatives, which then sends you into a lower state. And you get in this kind of like endless cycle of negative leads to negative, leads to negative, and it just compounds upon itself.
Yeah.
We spoke just before we hopped on, and there was a fantastic quote that was brought up by Wendell Berry, and that's that people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to the food. Deconstruct this for me. Like, take me through what this makes you think about.
Oh my God. I mean, I have how much time do you have? I have so many feelings about
long form podcast. So fill me in. Bring me up to speed.
Well, first of all, and this is, we're really seeing the effects of this right now during COVID, but we have a profit-driven healthcare. So there's not a monetary incentive to get people healthier. And then on top of that, when you realize that there's so much money in these large food corporations, and they're all connected, right? So they're all connected to big agriculture, and then there's big food. And you can actually Google this and look this up, but there's only a couple, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like 13 companies own our entire food industry and our entire food infrastructure. And the problem is that there's this disconnect when you go to the doctor. Like we were never taught in school the connection to the food that you put in your mouth and what it does to your body outside of the physical effects. We've been so focused on like, oh, if you eat too much, you're going to get, super overweight. But there was no other connection outside of like, or at least for me in where I grew up, like there was no, hey, what you eat is going to directly correlate with the energy that you have and the way that you feel, like physically and mentally. It's going to affect your mental health. Like forget the physical stuff. I mean, that's also another topic of discussion. And so when you go to the doctor now, like that quote said, it's like we're fed by the food industry that's not paying attention to our health. So there's this misconception that if this food is on the shelf, that it's safe. Like, oh, we wouldn't allow that on the shelf if it was truly harmful for us. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's simply not true. You can look up, I don't know how aware your listeners are with Monsanto and Roundup, or otherwise known as glyphosate. To give a little bit of a background, so Monsanto is a company, they're most famously known for, they're a big agriculture company. They're most famously known for producing Roundup, which is what we spray on our lawns and weeds and all that. But a lot of people are unaware that it's called glyphosate. It is also sprayed on our food. Now, we have laws that if your food is organic, if it's being produced and grown organically, it's not allowed to have glyphosate on there. But if you are eating non-organic food, there's like a 90+% chance that your food has been sprayed with glyphosate. And why is this a problem? Because glyphosate in the last 10 years, we have realized is it's an antibiotic. So it completely destroys our gut flora. We need good, healthy bacteria in our body. It's what makes up 70% of our immune system. And so when you consume this glyphosate, it's destroying our gut flora, which we need for a multitude of reasons for our health. It's also been directly connected to cancer now. If you want to Google, Bayer bought Monsanto a couple of years ago, and they are in so many litigations right now with farmers who have been getting cancer from using their product. So my point in all of this is that this is happening to our food right now. And then on top of that, I actually mentioned this earlier. So, countries like Sweden, they don't allow the majority of our products in the US to be sold on their shelves in Sweden because of all of the additives and the hormones and the pesticides and everything that we allow on our food in the United States. They do not even allow those additives in their food. So they are not legally allowed to sell the majority of the food that we sell on our shelves in Sweden. This is what made me so angry. Kraft, for example, Kraft Macaroni and Cheese makes a different formulation of macaroni and cheese for here in the United States than they do in the UK. Google this right now. If you're listening, go and Google the ingredients for mac and cheese in the United Kingdom, and then look at the ingredients here. And So they know that this is a problem, and what pisses me off is they have a formulation for it. They're already selling it in other countries, but because we don't have any regulations about the food that we sell in the United States, and it's cheaper, because that's really what it is. They're protecting their bottom line. So they're selling us food that they know is harming our bodies, but then they're selling a different variation of it in another country.
Same thing with ketchup, same thing with a bunch of different condiments, same thing with it's fascinating because I spent a little bit of time in Europe. I was going to say last year, but now it'll be 2 years ago actually. And I was eating basically the same things that I would in the States, but I felt so much better and had so much more energy. And I want to talk a little bit about Bali in a second, because that's the first time that I actually recognized what I put in my body directly. The inputs fix the outputs kind of thing. But what you brought up, and something that I want to bring any of the listeners' attention to, is if you haven't seen the movie Dark Waters, if you don't believe anything that's being said right now, go see the movie Dark Waters, which is based on a true story, and it's about what's the company? DuPont, where they knew that, like, a handful of execs of the company knew that what they were putting into the environment was not only damaging, but it had all of these different birth defects and health effects, and it was killing the farmers and their cattle, and they had like black teeth. And when what's his name? Mark Ruffalo plays the main character, and he plays a journalist who went to go to, and I think to this day he's still investigating this. It's been like 25 years or something, but they keep pushing it down. And like, they've extended these lawsuits out for 25 years now. But he went to go tour one of the cities where they were burying barrels of this toxic waste that was a runoff of what they were creating. And it was, you might know this, I don't know the name of it. It was the non-stick on the pans. Teflon, that was it. And that's what they were making to coat these pans with it, but then they were dumping and putting the barrels of toxic waste and burying it on this land in this city. Then one of the barrels burst, leaked into the water supply of the city, and then all of these people in the city ended up, like, all of their kids had birth defects. All the people who were working on the line had birth defects. They had their teeth turned black. Like, all these different things happened. The company knew about it, but just completely avoided it. And in everything, I mean, you look at Kraft, they know the difference because they're selling something opposite somewhere else. And if you look at, I mean, ketchup is an easy one. Look at what's in our ketchup, and then look at, like, Google or go to the UK or somewhere in Europe and look at ketchup. It's like tomato, salt, pepper, I don't know what else.
And maybe cane sugar, and that's it. In which, I mean, I have a problem with that too, but at least it's not corn syrup, you know?
True. The point I wanted to bring up about Bali, that is a funny story, but also kind of can be gross. When I discovered yoga years ago, I was going to school for theater, and you want to talk here a little bit about my backstory. I was going to school for theater, and my second year at university, I got asked to go perform and basically train in Bali, Indonesia, with these. It was people from Singapore, Melbourne, Australia, and then some from LA, as well as Arizona State, where I went. And so we went to perform with some of the best in this compound in Bali. And that was my first time out of the country. And what we were eating was completely organic. Like, they would go out to the fields and bring back what we were going to eat for breakfast every day. So I was there for, I think, just shy of 40 days. I then flew, and I felt absolutely fucking amazing. And then I flew back. I landed in LA, and guess where the first place I went when I landed? I literally took an Uber from the airport. In-N-Out. Yes.
I knew it.
And you know what happened?
You got really sick.
I couldn't go to the bathroom for 5 days. I almost had to go to the hospital. So I remember, like, ate it day one, nothing. I was fine, but, like, it doesn't even make sense. You're like, I didn't go to the bathroom, whatever. Day two, I was like, that's strange. Like, I then thought about it. I was like, that's weird. Day three, I was like, okay, my stomach's starting to hurt a little bit and like still haven't gone to the bathroom. Day 4, no, I think it was day 3. Day 3, I went to work. I was working at a restaurant down the street from college. And I was like, yeah, guys, I literally haven't gone to the bathroom in 3 days now. And my boss at the time was like, oh, all you need to do is drink some smooth move tea and, you know, you'll be good to go. So,
been there.
So I was like, okay, cool. So I buy some on the way home, like yogi tea, smooth move tea. And I on the way home, get it. And then I brew it. I steep it for, I don't know, 5 minutes. I drank it. And then I went into work the next day and I was like, nothing happened. They're like, how long did you steep it for? I go, 5 minutes. They go, oh, no. 2 bags, like 30-minute steep time, boiling hot water. Chug that, go to sleep. You'll be good to go. Actually, sorry. They didn't say go to sleep. That's the funny part of the story. So they say, chug that, you'll be good to go. So I was at work. I went across the street and I got more. This was at like 10 a.m. So I chug it. I steep it in the back of the kitchen at this restaurant.
Oh, no.
I chug it. And then I go out and start my shift. I was a server at the time. I go out and start my shift. Everything's good. Like 2 hours go by, 2.5 hours go by. And then like God opened the fucking sky on me. I was like, guys, I have to go. And I'm like, I have to go home right now. I'm not kidding. I for anyone watching right now, I was in my car driving, like squeezing so hard to get home. I get home and we're in like a group chat. I sent them a photo of a book that was like 500 pages. I was like, I'm going to be here for a while.
Oh, the human body is so funny.
And then that day I was like, wow, what goes in is really what comes out and also what fuels you for the rest of your life and what fuels the person that you want to become. Because that's really essentially what it is. What you're putting into your body is shaping who you want to become. Do you want to do you want to live off premium gasoline and have premium outputs and be able to perform at the highest level? Or do you want to prioritize convenience, but then be able to only put in a couple hours of what you actually want to do and then get tired because of what you're putting into your body? That really then breaks it down. Like we boil this down to the most simple of the two. Like, how well do you want to perform with what you are passionate about? Like what we were talking about earlier. How well do you want to perform? Okay. If it's you want to be the best of the best, well, we need to fix the inputs for a second here, because what you're putting in is directly correlated to the energy levels, to what comes out. And I'm sure you could go through an entire list of everything that is a benefit of that and then a con of the other. To kind of surmise this and bring it back around to a question for you would be, what if someone's looking to not really change their diet, but almost make a lifestyle change towards a healthier direction? Because you and I both know diets don't work because you just go back to what you're doing before when it's over. Exactly. So in order to make a healthier lifestyle change, what are some of the initial steps or tips or things that you could give someone in order to take what they're currently doing and begin to transition towards a healthier approach to what they ingest, what they put into their bodies?
Yeah. I love this. Okay, so I have a couple of tips for this. One, I would say first and foremost, and this is where I started, is just start prioritizing real whole foods. Stop trying to focus so much on what you're cutting out and focus more on what you're bringing in. Because the more you bring in, you kind of just naturally crowd out the stuff that you don't really want to be fueling your body with. So that's first and foremost. And what do I mean by that? Like, what is real food? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're just constantly, it doesn't mean you're like foraging at the farmer's market all the time. It can be. But we're very fortunate to live in a time and also to live in America in a place where we do have a lot of options. So, you want to prioritize whole, real foods as much as you possibly can. I know a lot of people are daunted by this in the beginning because of cooking. A lot of people feel like they can't cook, but although I feel like a lot of people really hammered that in the last year and like really figured it out during lockdown, hopefully. But yeah, so prioritizing whole real foods, Google recipes, go on YouTube and use that as a resource to figure out how to make really simple, easy meals made from whole real foods. But then also like utilize the companies that are making more like packaged stuff that is healthier. Like, so one of my biggest things is I always say, like, you want to get away from processed foods. And that generally speaking means like you want to buy less things in bags and packages and boxes. However, there are companies now that are making healthier, cleaner alternatives. So like I'll say, for example, there's this brand that I really love, Simple Mills. And this is a rule that I tell people all the time. When you're at the grocery store and you're reading an ingredient label and you're wondering like, okay, is this packaged food? Because generally speaking, let's say like packaged foods, you want to limit them in general. However, if you're wanting to buy one and you're looking at this ingredient label and you're like, okay, I recognize what every single one of these ingredients are. And then you ask yourself, if I wanted to make this product at home, I don't have to, but could I? Could I walk around the grocery store right now, go down this list of ingredients, buy all of these ingredients and make this at home? If the answer is yes, then buy it. And that's the easiest, simplest way of determining whether or not what you're holding is like an actual something that you want to put in your body, because it's made with whole real food ingredients. Another really good example is this brand Primal Kitchen. You will never see an ingredient on there where you're like, I don't even know, like, where would I even buy this? Like, what is this? Also, like, where does one obtain this? Like, where do you buy this? You know? And so that's the biggest thing. So prioritize real food. This one's, well, I was going to say easy, but I guess hard for some people, but this is probably the number one best thing you could do for yourself if you're still doing this, is drop the sodas. That is like the easiest way to, if you just eliminate sodas and start drinking sparkling waters or something instead, because we now realize that sugar is the number one most detrimental thing to our health. Sugar is terrible. It is what is driving the obesity epidemic right now. It's what's driving the diabetes epidemic. It's also driving the cardiovascular disease epidemic, which people don't understand this. We have vilified fat for so long, and we've told everyone to eat low fat. Well, you know what happened when we took the fat out of food? We replaced it with sugar. And we were so wrong about fat. And that brings me to the other one, is prioritize good, healthy fats. And what do I mean by good, healthy fats? Fatty fish like salmon, nut butters like almond butter, peanut butter. Make sure that you get it organic because of the pesticides that are sprayed. Coconut oil, avocado oil. Avocados are really good for you. You want to really prioritize good, healthy fats because those are not only really good for your body, but they fuel your brain. Because also what we're realizing is that we need fat for our brain to function properly. And a cool side effect of the more you incorporate good, healthy fats, the less you're going to crave sugar. So it's also going to help you with your sugar cravings. So yeah. And then obviously you want to make sure that you focus on getting like good, high quality protein, eating as many fruits and vegetables as you possibly can. I always tell people, don't limit your fruits and vegetables. I would say be careful with fruit just because of sugar. You don't want to be eating like 18 bananas a day, but like most people don't do that, you know? But those would really be, that's where I would start.
Another point to this that I want to piggyback off of is previously in a past life, I should say, I used to party a lot and drink a lot. And I recognized that in a past life, I laugh at myself sometimes. And what I recognized is that when I was drinking, I craved different foods. And then when I stopped drinking, I don't really drink anymore. When I stopped drinking, I started craving sugar. And I started craving like random like Sour Patch Kids or like random things just out of the blue. And I realized because I was giving my body so much alcohol that it was then converting it into sugars essentially. Sugar. Yeah. So then when I cut that out, my body doesn't know the difference between the two. So it's now looking to replace the lack of sugar with more sugar. And then when I stopped giving it sugar, because I didn't really then change my diet, I've always kind of ate pretty intuitively, that when I changed that, then that completely dissipated. And like the sugar was like no more. Once I was able, and it all stemmed, like if we go back to the root, which is something that, again, Western society doesn't necessarily do. They kind of oh, let's put a Band-Aid on top of it rather than finding what the underlying symptom is. That was then the alcohol converting to sugar made me crave different foods. But then when you cut out the root cause, then wow, now all of this, like there's things that I didn't even notice at the time until people were like, wow, your face looks thinner. I'm like, but I was never overweight. It was just like even little bits here and there. Like, your face looks thinner. Wow, my clothes fit better. Wow, I have more energy during the day. Wow. And I heard a quote from someone that made me, as I'm getting older now, I'm not even that old, but as I'm getting older, made me recognize like what partying really was. And it's trading happiness from tomorrow for right now. You're basically stealing happiness from tomorrow for the given moment, which, yes, prioritize the present. I understand that, but not at the expense of something else, which was a very big, like, mic drop aha moment. And I was like, wow, I can do everything that I was doing, but by making one simple shift, I don't then have to be in pain or self-inflicted pain tomorrow, which now if we go back to the cycle of everything, now if we recognize what that causes, now then mentally I'm not fully there, which then affects my energy levels, which then affects my output, which then affects my fulfillment, and now you're depressed and you don't know why. Let's go back to the beginning and figure out why everything happened the way that it did. Again, the inputs fix the outputs.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought about it like that. That is, it's a great point. And it's so funny. I also, in a past life of my 20s, drank and partied a lot. And I have a similar thing. Like, I look back now, I was actually just telling a friend this yesterday. I was like, I feel like I kind of scrubbed my computer in my life of photos from then. I mean, I can dig and I can find them somewhere, but
brief technical difficulties, but take me back to your past life of partying and doing things that are part of growing up and part of what have shaped you into who you are today. So it's not a negative. Yeah.
Well, so this is part of my story and how I got into health and nutrition, actually. You probably will see a common theme with most people that end up in the profession that I'm in. They went through something in their life that caused them to come back to health. And then having gone through that, we realized the importance of it. And some people, like mine was not super crazy. Like I have some friends who have, got diagnosed with horrible autoimmune disorders. Like, everyone's story is different, but mine was really pretty simple in the fact that I grew up in a household where my mom at the time, in the 80s and 90s, people would have called her kind of like a crunchy hippie, quote unquote, because we were shopping at natural food stores. We were, I never had access to all the crappy sugary cereals. We always had an off-brand natural cereals at my house. And one of my best friend's moms, every time I see her to this day, she laughs at me and she's like, look at you now. She's like, you used to come over to our house and just clear out our pantry of all of the Dunkaroos and, all the sugary cereals and the Pop-Tarts and all this stuff. Cause my mom never bought that stuff. So fast forward to then I'm 17. I'm moving to Boulder on my own. I never really ate out. My mom is an amazing, wonderful cook. I mean, she was cooking these amazing organic meals every night. And I recognize now how amazing that was because not everyone had that. I never ate fast food. It was so rare. So then I go to college and I'm like, woo, I'm on my own. I can eat Taco Bell whenever I want. I got Jimmy John's and I went for it. So not only was I binge drinking and drinking a ton of beer, but I was going for that fourth meal at Taco Bell at 3 a.m. after partying all night. And then I come home and my parents are like, oh my God, are you okay? Because I had gained 20 pounds in a very short time span. And look, I want to emphasize this. This is not about the physical aspects of it. It is not about the weight necessarily, although it does cause detrimental effects down the line to our health. But what I really noticed the most looking back on that is that I felt sick all the time. I couldn't really focus on my schoolwork. And and you have to name, it feels uncomfortable when your clothes don't fit you anymore. And I just I felt sick and all the time, and I had no energy for anything. And then, it took me a couple years to really understand that. Like I went through a couple years of like eating pretty crappy. But for me, I had the stark difference between when I lived at home and I was eating really healthy and knowing what it felt like to feel really good and energized in your body. And then going to this place of like, wow, I need to like change something about what I'm doing right now, because it's not fueling me to perform and live the life that I want to live. And so that's when during this time, also my mom was like, she did a really good job of this, actually, not always, but my mom was obviously like horrified and worried because she could see that I was on this path of like eating a lot of fast food and whatever. And so she started, we had the internet at the time, but this was not like it is now where you just email someone an article. So my mom was literally cutting out newspaper clippings of various things, like you want to avoid hydrogenated oils, which we now know are trans fats, and they've basically been taken out of our diet. And this was like 15 years ago. And she would cut out these little articles and mail them to me. And then she would mail me a book every once in a while and just be like, you should read this about health. Like, it's really interesting. And I remember at first, just like, I would read it and I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay. And then it just like, it was almost like something just clicked all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, wait, I read this one book that really opened my eyes to what you and I have been saying this entire episode, was like, what you put in your body directly correlates to how you're fueling your cells. Like, you're quite literally fueling your cells, to perform every bodily function in your body. And if you're not putting in good, high quality food, then you're not going to get a high quality output, and vice versa. If you're putting in really good, high quality food, then you're going to get energy and you're going to feel better. And so that it took me that of like going through these partying years and eating like crap and really not taking care of my body to then be able to step back and be like, wow, okay, I got to change this.
It's interesting that you say the stark contrast between the two, because there's 2 points I want to make here. And the first one being is that the vast majority of people don't have that contrast because they don't have the kind of almost the healthy upbringing. It's more of like, here are the sugary cereals. Here are all of these other things that are like the quintessential upbringing in America. Like, you got the Lucky Charms, you got the, I don't know, toaster strudels, whatever you want to call it, and then you get to a point where then you go to college, you're off on your own, and then you're like, oh yeah, I just eat whatever, like I've always been doing, kind of thing. But most people don't have that contrast to recognize the difference. And then they are living a life where their normal is that sick feeling. They don't know any different. So if you never knew any different, if you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know what you could potentially feel like, then where you're currently at, there's no way to understand that.
Yeah.
To go down a side path, and I'll pull us back in, but I was listening to a Joe Rogan episode with, I don't remember her name, but she's the girl who escaped from North Korea.
Oh my God, that episode is amazing, by the way.
It's insane.
I'll
link to it in the show notes if anyone wants to listen to it. But she was saying that basically she didn't know any better in so many other areas of her life. There's cannibalism, there's starvation, there's rape, there's like absolutely every possible thing you could think of that's a negative in the worst possible way. But then brainwashed her into thinking that that's how like life should be. And you don't know. So, I mean, I'm taking this down a path that's like giving you a huge contrast between the two. But now relate that big contrast to someone who doesn't know any different from what they've been eating growing up their whole life. Then they go to school, and the next thing you know, they're, I don't know, obese, and they don't have an idea of what potentially their life could be. And then they have to have this tipping point that takes them back. Luckily for you, you had the stark contrast going into school. So what most people would be negative to a positive, yours was positive, then to like a negative essentially, then to like, a release, and then you got to pull yourself back in. The second point that I wanted to make is an interesting thing of how we're conditioned when we are through being brought up, through our upbringing. Because you were given all these healthy foods, it was almost like an act of rebellion in a sense, where I'm like, oh, I'm free. I can do my own thing now. Which is interesting to think about, because when you think about that, then what you're giving, granted your mom wanted you to be healthy, which is very commendable. That's awesome. But then what you're neglecting to let your child experience, and the reason I bring this up is I went to a private school through 7th grade, and then 8th grade was this whole like, drop the bomb on me kind of moment. But it's because I was sheltered to a certain way of thinking. And then when you now see the opposite way, it's like, oh yeah, I 100% want to go that way because it's not what I'm used to. And it's like intriguing and interesting. And now you're the bad boy kind of like approach. You're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then you have to pull yourself back in. So it's, I don't know, what are your thoughts in regards to the upbringing then? Do you think it was all a positive, even though you had when you went to school and it kind of pulled you back because it was a new thing to try? Like, do you see that as a positive? Or if you could go back, how would you change what you did growing up?
Growing up or when I went to college? Or both? Or what do you mean?
I would say growing up conditioned the college experience for you in a specific way and then colored it to the reason why you wanted to go towards the binging, the fourth meal, that approach.
You know, I'm really grateful for how my mom did it for me growing up, especially now, knowing now what I know as far as like the first couple years of your life. And really, like they say, the first couple of years are the most formative when it comes to your nutrition and what you feed your baby, because it really does set your child up for life. And I want to say that for anyone listening that had a different experience, this is not to make you feel bad or shame, or also to say that you're just like effed and there's no way around it. That is not at all what I'm saying. Our bodies are so highly resilient that once you start taking care of your body and you give it the proper tools and the proper nutrition, our bodies can bounce back. But, you know, when I started studying nutrition, my mom just like loves to gloat about this now, because I started coming to her and just being like, I'm so grateful to you that you really prioritized my health and my nutrition growing up, because now that I'm studying this and I see how important it is for our bodies, I'm so full of gratitude. And she always laughs, because I remember one of my best girlfriends growing up was the complete opposite. She was the one whose mom I mentioned earlier, and I would clean out her pantry. She was eating Burger King 4 nights a week at least. And my mom said that, she goes, Court, it was so hard because you would throw just constant tantrums because all you wanted were those damn toys from Burger King and McDonald's, and you wanted to eat like your friend. And she was like, it was so hard, but I'm so glad that I did it because it was worth it, because it really protected your health. And then at the same time, I'm so glad that I had that experience. Like you said, that kind of rebellious, like I needed to, you're right. It really was this like act of rebellion. And I wanted to do what I wanted and eat the foods that my friends were eating. And there was this, like, I have a lot of, it's not sympathy is the right word, but like maybe empathy is a word for parents trying to navigate this time that we live in with all the junk food while trying to like allow their kids to have fun and go to birthday parties and not feel deprived, and while also trying to prioritize their health, because it's a really hard balance. Because if you go too like one way, too hard in a direction, it can lead to some really unhealthy habits. It can lead to binge eating. It can, lead to feelings of deprivation. And like I explained earlier, I was that kid that like I felt a little deprived, and then I would go overboard and I would binge and I would clear out the pantry. But I feel fortunate that for whatever reason, I was able to, like, even though I kind of went like, I went off the kilter for a while and I really went to this one direction. I really believe with most things in life, there is this pendulum, and sometimes it has to swing really far one side to then come back and kind of find that balance. And I'm grateful for all of the different pendulum swings that I had, because it really did, like you said, it gave me perspective. And I want to bring it back to something that you said earlier, and this is very true to me, and to a lot of people that start making changes in their diet. Is, you're right, a lot of people don't even understand how sick they feel in their bodies because they don't have anything to compare it to. And you don't start realizing it until you start making healthier changes. And it's why often you'll see people, when they start getting on this track of eating healthier and they're exercising every day, they may seem a little like fanatic and like a little bit obsessed, but it's usually what that is they are so excited by how good they feel in their bodies. And they've found this new way of like existing in the world that they didn't even know was possible. And that's why people get so excited about their health, because they're like, oh my God, my brain is functioning better. I feel better. I feel clearer. Like I have more energy now. And I want to end this whole rant by saying this, like for anyone listening, that my hope is that no one comes out of this conversation feeling like shamed or like I'm pointing any sort of blame on anyone personally or saying like you've done this all wrong or whatever it is. Because the way that I view this is that we live in a country where unfortunately our food system and our healthcare system has really failed us. We make it incredibly hard to eat healthy in this country. We make it very, very confusing, and we make it super unaccessible. It's really expensive. There's so many issues going on right now, and it feels like a constant uphill battle. And so I don't want anyone leaving this conversation feeling like, well, fuck, I'm just, screwed and it's all my fault. And, you're trying to shame me. That is not at all. Like, I really believe that. And it's why I'm so passionately about this, and why it brings me back to this like food activist side of things, is that I want to change the way that we operate and the way that we produce food in this country, because our food system has really failed us.
I love that you say that. And I love that you point out the fact that when people discover their health and when they awaken to that they really are almost fanatical, but it's because they're now fueled by passion. Taking us back to kind of bringing the conversation full circle, because they're recognizing what they've been missing all of this time, and that kind of missing internal piece that is going to allow them to then become the person that they know they're capable of becoming. And that's an exceptionally important piece to your life, and a very commendable one. So anyone listening, no matter how far to one side or the other you are, know that you always have the ability to pull yourself back, because that's the beauty of life and the experience that we're living. And that every single experience that you've had up until this point in your life has ultimately shaped who you are. So the fact that you're listening to this shows that you're obviously interested in progressing and growing and becoming the person that you're meant to be. So take it as a positive and recognize anything in this conversation. If there's one piece that stood out to you, take that, run with it, and see how you then feel, because nothing that we say, it could be right or wrong for any person. It's all for you to uncover and discover for yourself. And when you do that, and when you become aware to the process itself, and when you become almost curious in a sense of how your body responds to different things, that's when you're going to finally uncover what works for you and discover the why it works for you, which is ultimately what's going to set yourself up for success and for a fulfilling life.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Mic drop. Well,
yes.
Courtney, this has been an absolute blast. I want to thank you for your time, and sincerely, I want to thank you for your time and all of the education that you've brought to this conversation. I have a couple rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you, to wrap up this, which I have a feeling this might be the bookend of episode 1, and there's multiple things that we didn't hit today that I'd like to in the future, but
let's do it.
Question number 1 is, in terms of your own personal development, who or what has had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, my personal development. I'm going to say my dad. We have had my relationship with my dad has truly been my biggest challenge on earth as far as relationships go. We hit a point a couple years ago where it was so, I'm going to say it, volatile. It was not like physically in any way, but just like with our words, that I said, if you don't come to therapy with me, then I can't have a relationship with you. And it changed everything. I mean, our relationship now is night and day. And through that experience, and just through going through therapy and recognizing my role in all of this, and really going through a challenging time with my dad, and coming out on the other side of it with the help of this therapist, has really helped me and my growth a lot as well. And it's also caused me to look internal, look at the things and, the actions and the role that I play in things, and also learning to not take on other people's stuff and like letting that be, while also like taking responsibility of the role that I play in it as well.
If you could have a conversation with someone living or not, who would it be and why?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know. There's like so many. I mean, okay, I'm just going to take it this place because it was the first thing that popped in my head. My little sister passed away when I was 6 and I was 8, and I would love more than anything to have a conversation with her now as adults.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. Thank you.
This is an interesting next question then. If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
I mean, this goes back to stuff with my sister, that life is really hard, super scary right now, but you're going to find your own way. And this is it's going to bring so much meaning to your life that one day you'll understand, maybe not understand why this happened, but understand, what you needed, I guess, to learn, and that this is your path in life.
Last but not least, in your opinion, what is the single most important thing someone can do to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life?
The number one thing?
Number one thing. Or most important thing.
Okay, I'm going to say to prioritize your mental health, because it's all related. And so many, I know this is supposed to be rapid fire, but I have a couple things I got to say about this. I'm so sorry. What I've realized the more that I've gotten into health, especially like when I have clients that I take on and I'm trying to help people unpack their relationship with food, everything comes back to your relationship with yourself. And if you have underlying things going on in your life, whether that's like unaddressed trauma, unaddressed grief, if you're carrying around something in your life that you're not addressing and allowing yourself to feel those feelings and really feel them and move forward, it really does affect every area of your life. It affects your food choices. It absolutely affects your relationships with other people. And until you can really address those, you're not going to fully be able to address like every area of your life. And when you're able to, and you're able to get back to this place of like self-love, then you start making better choices for yourself. Because I say this all the time, what you eat and how you prioritize your health is the most important way that you can show self-love for yourself. And so I really believe that it all comes back to addressing our mental health and really taking care of your brain and your mental health first, because then everything else will slowly start kind of falling into line.
I love that you bring that up. And I kind of wish it wasn't at the end of the episode, so we can
do another one.
We could continue down that, and that might be the theme of number 2. So, Courtney, thank you again. I want to open the floor for you, though. Is there anything else you'd like to add or say, or is this kind of a to be continued moment right here?
Well, I always like to give people some positive reinforcement, because I know like my message may seem a lot of like doom and gloom. And, you know, I'm like, the healthcare system and the food industry is so messed up, and 88% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. And I know like all of this is really sad and it's scary and it feels like such an uphill battle. But I just want to remind people that, I mean, similar to what you said before, when you start unraveling all this and you really start to understand the importance of our food and the importance of taking care of your health and really like how it bleeds into every area of your life, you'll find the motivation to make those changes. And also I do want to remind people too, that you're not going to be able to change everything overnight. I mean, I've been in pursuit of my health for 15 years. And I only recently have felt like I've really kind of gotten to a place where I've really dialed in and I feel really good about my exercise routine and my diet and all that. And so I just want to encourage people listening and just remind you that, similar to what I said in the beginning, where the success, you think it looks like a straight line and it's all over the place. And, you know, you're going to try to eat really, really healthy. And then you're going to have a day where you eat like crap. I still have those days. So I just want to remind people that it's not, we don't have to make it as hard and complicated as it may seem, and just do one thing at a time. Don't try to tackle everything overnight. Just take tiny little baby steps in the direction of where you want to be. Implement little things about your diet. Maybe just start walking every day. If maybe exercising is the hardest thing for you, don't feel like you have to be like running marathons and doing CrossFit and all this crazy stuff. Literally just walk around your neighborhood every day. It could be as simple as that. And it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out to be. And just remember that those little changes over time start to build. And then you wake up one day like me, where if you looked at me 15 years ago, it was like, wow, that girl has no hope. And now some people would look at me and be like, oh, she's the picture of health or whatever. And I just want to say that this did not happen overnight. And I also don't consider myself the picture of health. But I just want to remind people that it's little baby steps over time and just do one thing at a time.
Beautiful. Courtney, thank you again so much for your time. This was an absolute pleasure. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's Kevin here. And before I let you go, I wanted to let you know that the complete show notes for this episode, as well as any other, can be found at kevinwathey.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a short review on Apple Podcasts. I love reading the reviews, and they're often the tipping point in helping us book some very hard to reach guests. Now, if you want to or would like to receive a weekly email from me called the Weekly Mindful Memo, head over to kevinwathey.com/VIP to subscribe. By signing up, you'll receive exclusive behind-the-scenes access and be the first to know about upcoming episodes, retreats, and more direct to your inbox. Again, you can sign up to receive the weekly Mindful Memo by going to kevinwathey.com/VIP. Thank you for listening. Much love, and have a wonderful rest of your day.